Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing the Open Great League team that helped me eclipse 2,900 ELO for the first time this season. Now this team is built around the newly released Pokemon Coalossal. Coalossal is a Fire and Rock type Pokemon with a moveset of Fire Spin, Rock Slide, and Flame Charge. When I initially tried out Coalossal, I was using one I got from a remote raid, so it was a pretty bad IV. But this Coalossal in today's video is a rank 11, and the bulk difference is quite noticeable. The full team is as follows: Shadow Scizor lead, Jellicent as the save switch, and Coalossal as the closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we're off to a tough start leading Shadow Scizor into Shadow Annihilate. Now this is a Pokemon that this team is AVA weak to, as both Scizor and Coalossal have losing matchups. However, Shadow Scizor is able to output really nice damage with bullet punches, so I can soft lose the matchup and get them very low. Unfortunately, they do not throw their energy, instead they bank the energy for later and send Licky Licky into Jellicent. I really can't afford to let Shadow Balls land onto Jellicent, so now I get to send in Coalossal. Coalossal, it lives up to the name. It is incredibly bulky. Shadow Ball, that's really not going to be much of a factor. My opponent goes for Shadow Ball number 2, and I'm more than happy to no-shield, as I am trusting in Jellicent to try and close out this game. I'm going to boost up my attack with Flame Charge shielded up by Licky Licky, and my opponent will pivot and send in Empoleon. Empoleon's not going to like what comes next. A boosted Flame Charge forces them to throw energy, and I'm more than happy to shield up, throw one Fire Spin, and then go for the boosted Flame Charge. This Flame Charge is going to be getting Empoleon very low. Empoleon gets fully farmed down. Look at Coalossal go. Now my opponent, they've completely lost their Empoleon. They have very little HP on the Licky Licky, and their Annihilate is on 1 HP. In comes Jellicent. Jellicent will make the Surf, and the little health that they have is basically going to be reduced to 0. They barely hang on, but I know that a Shadow Ball will not knock me out, and their Annihilate is in 1 Hex range. They send in Annihilate, able to force the final shield, but Licky Licky would need to have a second Shadow Ball loaded, and they do not. We Hex down Licky Licky, and that's a good game. Great lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Florges. My opponent safe switches into Bastiodon, and unfortunately, I don't actually have a great response. I send in Jellicent, but unfortunately, I don't have like a Mud Slapper or a fighter to hard punish the Bastiodon safe swap. So for my opponent, it's a tactic that somehow actually pays off. Stone Edge is going to land, dealing some pretty considerable damage to the Jellicent, but Jellicent, due to this pretty fast Hex pacing, is going to get the double up on Surfs before my opponent can make it to a second Stone Edge. Surf is going to land. That will not take the knockout. I CMP tie the Bastiodon to ensure that I can get them off the field. Unfortunately, this could set up a pretty big farm down, and it will. In comes Galarian Moltres. I send in Coalossal, they bank energy, in comes Florges, and I respond with the Shadow Scizor. Now Scizor, I'm not in range where Chilling Water will KO, so I'm more than happy to let this go. These bullet punches are absolutely shredding. It turns out I won't even need to throw a Trailblaze. I believe even a Night Slash at -1 will still knock out. Night Slash takes the KO, in comes Galarian Moltres, and I get to fire off the Trailblaze. Trailblaze is going to be no-shielded by the Moltres. Moltres gets the farm down, and now it's all up to Coalossal. If my opponent wants a chance to win this game, it's by landing a payback. I respect it just to get baited with a fly, and the fact that my opponent has not top lefted yet makes me think that odds are they probably have it. Flame Charge is going to be shielded. I'm just going to try for a fast move farm down as I boost up my Fire Spins. I'm expecting a double bait, so I will go for the no shield, but disaster strikes. They land the payback, and suddenly I could be in trouble. I need to boost up this next Fire Spin, hope that I can survive the Sucker Punch. Coalossal with the 1 HP survive, and we clutch an incredibly narrow victory. Hopping into the next match, picking up an amazing lead, Shadow Scizor into Titan. My opponent safe switches into Galarian Corsola. I launch the Night Slash, get the shield, and then get a catch and sneak onto Coalossal. As you can see there, that catch had me pretty hyped, so I boost up the volume on my music, and we continue the battle. I'm going to look to overfarm quite a bit with Coalossal, because I know a Flame Charge will not knock out yet, and I want to try and exit this matchup as boosted as possible. So I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back Flame Charges, and now my opponent can't really afford to send in this Titan, because the Titan's going to get overrun with this damage. My opponent saves energy. They're going to be bringing out Credilli, and I don't think Credilli's going to like what comes next. Boosted Rock Slide is going to land big damage onto Credilli, and I get Rock Slide number 2. This Rock Slide is going to be getting Credilli deep into the red HP. We get the Fire Spin down, and there's just no path forward for my opponent, and they will concede the match. Tricky lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Empoleon. Against Empoleon leads, I actually like to go for a very weird play, and that is bluffing like I have 2 answers to Empoleon in the back, even though I'm actually ABA weak. This a lot of the times can force my opponents to actually try and commit resources, try and make a play for switch advantage, and in doing so, I can set up my Shadow Scizor to reverse sweep the game. In this instance, we're able to get a Hydro Cannon catch, and my opponent sends out Florges. Florges' Trail Blaze does do some pretty significant damage. I'm able to make it to a second Surf, and this Surf will knock them out unless they put up a shield, but my opponent actually does not play for switch. Instead, they're going for a farm down with the Empoleon, but they do not get it. I get the Shadow Ball, they're forced to fire off a charge attack, and now I've gotten some pretty nice damage onto this Empoleon. My opponent goes for a Trailblaze catch onto Gourgeist, but they end up catching a Night Slash. Night Slash does big damage. I transfer the Incinerate onto Coalossal, and now Coalossal's about to absolutely sweep. There's nothing that the opponent can do. I have 2 shields to hide behind. I'm just going to farm down this Empoleon with Fire Spins. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We've seen this lead before, and it's a tricky one. Shadow Scizor into Annihilate. This is the non-Shadow Annihilate, which means they're going to take a lot less damage, but they're also going to be dealing quite a bit less damage as well. This means that as I farm up to the Trailblaze and bait, hopefully I should make a second Night Slash. It's going to be close, but Shadow Scizor barely hangs on, and just like that, my opponent is now in a bit of a tricky spot. They end up giving up the final shield, and I send in Jellicent to go for a 1-shield farm down. Now all shields are down for the remainder of the game. My opponent pivots out and they send in Stunfisk. Stunfisk is a core breaker for this team. The best answer to Stunfisk is Shadow Scizor, as Shadow Scizor can win the ones going straight Trailblaze. But unfortunately, Scizor is gone, so now I'm going to have to rely on Jellicent. This next charge attack will be on charge attack priority, but Jellicent wins CMP over the Stunfisk. This is super effective damage, and Surf will knock out the Stunfisk. My opponent still has the very low health Annihilate. They haven't revealed what they have in the back. It's Fortress, and now I get to send in Coalossal. Coalossal, look at these Fire Spins go. They make a nice catch of the Flame Charge catching onto Annihilate, but when they bring back in the Fortress, I just don't die to a Rock Tomb. They did farm up to an Earthquake though. Earthquake could actually knock me out. That's double super effective. Earthquake does KO Coalossal, but now they used all their energy. They can't outpace the Jellicent, and my opponent will concede the match. Picking up a very bad lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Charjabug. Now this is a pretty massive core breaker for this team, as Scizor gets absolutely destroyed by Charjabug and so does Jellicent. So my game plan is pretty simple. I kind of need to stay in this matchup, play it out. Coalossal is never a Pokemon that can be safe swapped due to its very polarizing typing. So I basically just need to throw away the Scizor, send in Coalossal, farm down, and then hope that with the Charjabug out of the way, Jellicent will be able to sweep. Coalossal is going to get the full farm down, exiting with so much energy. In comes Gastrodon, and I make a misplay. I shouldn't have thrown the Fire Spin there. I should have reacted in time to instantly bring in the Jellicent, because then I could have outpaced, Shadow Balled, and got my turn back. But now, I'm just going to be down a Hex for the remainder of the game because of that slow reaction time. My opponent is going to be hit with a Shadow Ball that does big damage, and the fact that they no-shielded that is pretty nice because I'm getting this Gastrodon lower and lower and lower. I'm going to be double shielding. I'm just looking for a full Hex down. Whatever's in back is going to have to deal with a 100 energy Jellicent. My opponent unfortunately makes a last-second Body Slam, and that will get me very low. In the back is Annihilate. I actually have a chance here. I'm going to fire off this Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball gets the shield. Now I will go for the Surf bait, and I know that I have a bunch of energy loaded on Coalossal. Surf gets the shield. In comes Coalossal. 1 Fire Spin and the Flame Charge. Let's ramp up this damage. Flame Charge into the Annihilate is going to get them pretty low. Annihilate going to take the knockout with the Rage Fist, and this is going to be close. If I'm 2 away from the Surf, I will win this game. In comes the Jellicent. No, I'm 3 off. I get countered down, and unfortunately, we lose a Heartbreaker. Dream lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Whimsicott. But a Jellicent save switch is going to be very problematic for this team to deal with. Technically, this team is AAA weak to Jellicent. All 3 of my Pokemon lose to Jellicent, including my own, because since my attack stat is so low, I lose CMP in the mirror. I'm going to be switching in my own Jellicent, no shielding as they connect with the Shadow Ball, and returning fire with a Surf. Surf is going to be shielded. It looks like it's going to be a simultaneous KO, but my opponent throws at the last second. I don't really need switch advantage into a Whimsicott, so I'm just going to let that go, let my opponent have switch, and then reveal that I have Coalossal in the back. Now, unfortunately, my opponent knows that winning switch advantage accomplished nothing for them, because their Whimsicott has nowhere to go against Coalossal. I'm just going to fire off the Flame Charge as soon as I get it. I end up giving a Fairy Wind for free, but I just want to ramp up this damage. Unfortunately, the next Fire Spin barely fails to take the knockout. Whimsicott will go for the Seed Bomb in the back. Oh, they have their own Fire Rock type. In comes Magcargo. Magcargo will be able to hit me for big super effective damage with Rock Tomb. I don't know if I can survive a Rock Tomb from this health range, but I have shields to hide behind, so honestly, I won't really have to worry about that. I get to put up the shield, my opponent throws on alignment if they really want to apply these debuffs. But even debuffed, Rock Slide is going to do quite a lot of damage because I'm only at -1 due to the fact that I had Flame Charged earlier. My opponent tries for a catch, but unfortunately, as an Incinerate user, if your opponent's paying attention, you're never going to be able to get the catch. And 2 -1 Rock Slides will be enough to KO Magcargo and secure that win. Hopping into the next match, oh what a lead, Shadow Scizor into Wigglytuff. My opponent safe switches into Galarian Corsola, and we've seen a lot of teams that are pretty soft to Scizor. It definitely felt like, at least in my ELO bracket, Shadow Scizor lead proved to be a very good call in a lot of games, because there was a lot of teams that people just weren't really team building with Scizor in mind, and Scizor was feasting. Scizor gets a full farm down, exiting with so much loaded energy, and my opponent sends in Empoleon. At this point, this game is already won. My opponent just doesn't know it yet. They no-shield the Trailblaze, and look at the damage. Shadow Scizor putting on an absolute show. Unfortunately for Empoleon, their energy is going to go nowhere as in comes Jellicent. They send in the Wigglytuff and the reveal. We do not lose to Wigglytuff anymore. We have Coalossal and Shadow Scizor, and both of these Pokemon absolutely destroy Wigglytuff's hopes and dreams. Wigglytuff goes for the saddest Icy Wind I've ever seen. We boost our attack right back to neutral with the Flame Charge. And these Fire Spins, they aren't doing much, but it's easily more than enough. Wigglytuff goes for another Icy Wind. I'm expecting the switch, so I undertap the Flame Charge. Flame Charge, even at -1, should be knocking out the Empoleon. Empoleon gets KO'd. They lose all their energy. Opponent playing it out, fighting to the bitter end, but Coalossal takes the farm down and secures the win. We've got a blast from the past in the next match, Shadow Scizor into Shadow Drapion. Drapion is always able to grab early shields away from Scizor, but in the 2s, this matchup is absolutely terrible for the Drapion. Drapion ends up CMP tying Aqua Tail to the Trailblaze. Trailblaze gets shielded, and Aqua Tail, it'll do a lot, but I know that I will be able to hang on here. Aqua Tail is going to land, opponent safe switches into a Marowak, and here I make a massive misplay. Even though this is a boosted Night Slash, my opponent doesn't have a reason to shield it. They know that I'm short of a Trailblaze. And the fact that they no-shielded it means that was a colossal waste of energy. What I should have done was thrown the Bullet Punches, banked the Night Slash, and then sent in the Jellicent, because those were +1 Bullet Punches. 3 Bullet Punches would have put it into 4 Hex plus Surf range, and I could have just had a Charge Attack banked for later in the game. My opponent waiting down their switch timer, they're sending in the very low HP Drapion, and when they do that, I realize they're weak to Jellicent in the back. Jellicent fires off the Surf, the shield comes out from the Drapion. Drapion now has an Aqua Tail and a Crunch banked, and this is a true 50-50. I put up the shield, they bait, they now have the Crunch, and that forces me to catch onto Coalossal. Coalossal, more than happy to absorb that Crunch. That's not going to do much of anything in the back. No, it's Shadow Annihilate, and I have completely blundered this game. I got the 50-50 wrong. I should have saved the Night Slash, but I threw it. And unfortunately, if I had a Night Slash banked here, I could just win the game. Win Charge Attack priority over Annihilate, be good to go, but I don't. I threw the Night Slash earlier, Scizor got KO'd, and unfortunately, that cost us everything. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty nice lead, Shadow Scizor into Hakamo-o. Hakamo-o does resist all the charge attacks from Scizor, but it's the Bullet Punch damage that's going to be a problem for my opponent. My opponent saves Hakamo-o, save switches into Charge-a-Bug, and unfortunately, they did not get Charge-a-Bug on either of my Pokemon that were weak to it, and instead they just get crushed by Coalossal. Coalossal, more than happy to absorb this pathetic discharge damage. I'm going to throw on really weird timing here because I want to get as much energy as humanly possible, and I go for the Flame Charge, so that way I will exit boosted. This should incentivize the Hakamo-o to throw pretty immediately, because even though they wall off Colossal's energy, a +1 Rock Slide would take the KO. They take the knockout with Brick Break. Shadow Scizor gonna be answered with Empoleon, and unfortunately this game was over from the start. The moment I had switch advantage, my opponent just did not have a way out. Empoleon will get to spam out Drill Packs, but this is a matchup that is just absolutely awful for Empoleon. Drill Pack after Drill Pack can connect, and Jellicent just simply does not care. Jellicent will get to fire off the back-to-back Shadow Balls, even if the opponent ends up double shielding. I mean, the Hex damage alone has gotten the Empoleon low enough that 2-shield Shadow Scizor will be able to close out this game. So, Shadow Ball does get shielded, back in comes the Shadow Scizor to launch the Trailblaze. Trailblaze will be boosting up that Bullet Punch damage as well. Empoleon barely survives, making it to a last-second charge stack. They go for the Drill Peck, either would have KO'd. Hakama knows it's getting farmed down, and we take the win. Hopping into the final match, leading Shadow Scizor into Florges, the absolute dream lead. Opponent is going to be safe switching into a Shadow Dusknoir, and this is a problem Pokemon for this team. Dusknoir can typically just farm through a Shadow Scizor. However, they always have to throw the Shadow Punch to get the shield back, so I can take advantage of that predictability and catch a Shadow Punch onto Coalossal. Coalossal is going to have to go for a 1-shield farm down because Dynamic Punch would inflict massive damage, but I will be able to boost myself up once Florges hits the field and get some pretty nice damage on that Mon. And because I'm so far ahead on energy, the Florges can't even overfarm a ton either. Flame Charge is going to land, boosting up Coalossal. Coalossal going for the boosted Rock Slide, but Florges will cut off Colossal's damage as it connects with the Chilling Water. I bring in Jellicent, anticipating them to blind switch, and they do. It's Empoleon in the back, and there's just no way out for my opponent. I fire off the Shadow Ball. Their only hope is calling a bait. Shadow Ball lands, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. And now some final thoughts on the team and Coalossal as a whole. Overall, I'm aware of the fact that Shadow Scizor and Coalossal do tend to have some polarizing matchups, where like Talonflame, there's nothing it can do against any fire types, and for Coalossal, if it gets aligned onto a Mud Slapper or any water type, the game is instantly over. However, these two Pokemon do end up forming a pretty solid core overall, and Jellicent just ends up being a very strong neutral presence. I love the flexibility of Jellicent. Jellicent has incredibly efficient pacing, spamming out Shadow Balls every 12 turns, and getting to Surf in the 12-9 alternating pacing. It actually might even be a bit more efficient than that. I'm not sure if it's 12-9-12 or 12-9-9. So I would have to double check that on Pokemoves. But either way, Jellicent, it's absolutely terrific. Jellicent really felt like the glue that kind of held this team together. Shadow Scizor and Coalossal are obviously so incredibly dominant in their good matchups, but Jellicent, even in its bad matchups, puts in some pretty significant work. So this team, I do recognize that this team will probably run hot and cold, just because, obviously no pun intended on Coalossal being a fire type, but just purely off the fact that if you end up leading into a bunch of Talonflames with Gastrodon in the back, this team is going to really struggle to fight back, just because they're kind of polarizing Pokemon. However, this team in more neutral lead scenarios, Shadow Scizor is so good at pressuring alignment, and then from there, the Jellicent Coalossal core can put in some very strong work with switch advantage. So I do think this is more of a hit or miss team than some of the more flexible ABCs that I've put out in the past, but I did end up having some pretty fun sets with it, and for a Pokemon that people thought was going to release with Incinerate and then didn't, I did want to showcase that even with it releasing with Fire Spin, it can still get wins, even at the absolute top of what would be the leaderboard if leaderboards were out this season. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.